as dictated by the syllabus, we're going to start by talking about paper 1. That's the prompt up here. As I pointed out previously, some of you are got to be a good 30 feet from me. I don't think you can see up here. You might be able to, especially, ooh, I'm going to try this. Ooh, look at that. But whether or not you can see up here, you are free to follow along. This is on course then. Go for it. All right, we're going to talk about paper 1. We will then briefly review MLA. Then after that, with all the time we have left, we're going to talk about old men playing basketball. All right, paper 1. Man, I can barely see this. It's hella blurry, right? That's not just my bad eyes. It's not blurry? Oh no. That, I'm right. I'm not, it's not, wow. Damn. Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad, but, ugh. All right. Man. Source text. Any assigned Fairchild poem. So the Fairchild poems that are on course then, Old Men Playing Basketball, Little Boy, Body and Soul, Beauty. You pick one of those for your paper, okay? Percentage of grade, 25%, that's kind of a lot, don't freak out. Format, MLA, that's all that means. Works cited page, all that jazz. We're going to talk about here in a second, get excited. Final draft will be due the 3rd of September. And today is the 15th, right? 16th. Damn it, I'm really bad with dates. I'll tell you right now. But we have a syllabus for that very reason. I was close. Anyway, 3rd of September, so we have a couple weeks. What the assignment is, we're going to spend the next handful of classes not just talking about poems, but specifically talking about them in such a way that's geared toward this assignment, right? So the kinds of analysis I'm asking you to practice, discuss, maybe fuck up a couple times in class, but hopefully get better. That's what we're aiming for in the paper. And what it is essentially is this. Every piece of art, even bad art, like crap songs that are on the radio, any piece of art is born out of our culture, okay? Generally speaking. Now it can inform culture, and we're not so worried about that, that's sociology. What we're worried about is how it came to be. So to cut through all that, what that means is, for instance, Old Men Playing Basketball was published in the 90s. I know it's a very long time ago for you guys. I was alive, you might not have been. But it's set in a time, might be a little bit earlier than that, like 80s, 90s, something like that. But the point is, it's not that long ago that we're totally divorced from the motivations, the ideals that are sort of espoused in that poem, right? The characters you meet, the speaker in particular, we're going to talk about him today. Why those people are the way they are, what worldviews they might have. Think back to last time, Autumn Begins in Martins Ferry, Ohio. I think I said at some point about how football is considered, about how some of those lower class folks are viewed. We have all that still, right? That's a poem from 1959, but it's still relevant. It says something about us as a people, a society, a culture. That's what we're trying to think about in these papers, okay? We're going to talk about that today with Old Men Playing Basketball. Hopefully it'll make a little more sense after today. But we're going to keep that train rolling here for the next couple of classes. Are there any questions at this stage about any of the words I just threw at you? Sweet. Is that OC back there?
Yeah.
Sweet. Lights coming on. I like to warn people. There you are. All right. So that's done with. Sweet. I think it's starting now. Let's talk about MLA. To begin with, and this is an honest question, I would appreciate an honest answer. Oh, okay.
Morning.
So
How you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Professor, are you using the AV system right now?
I just turned it off.
Okay. I need to turn it off. That's why I asked.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, great.
You're good. All right. The honest answer I wanted. Does anyone not know what I mean when I say MLA? Like that's totally good. Okay. Well, let's check that. Oh, obviously the marker somebody left is crap. That's what happens when you get cocky. I was like, I don't need a marker. It's my own. They left it. It's a piece of shit. MLA. Say you're writing a paper. Say that paper is 3 pages, which is how long ours is right now. How do you set up a paper in MLA? What are some of the things you need to do? Anybody know? Number the pages. Good. In your header, right? Now, of course, Word or pretty much any other word processor will do that for you once you tell it to number your pages. There we go. What else?
Works cited.
You need a works cited page, and that's going to be your last page. We'll start it there. Works cited. There's our entry. We're not going to talk about that today, so strap in for later. We'll talk about works cited some other time. But it goes at the end. Good. What else?
You need a header with like your name, teacher, class, and date.
Good. That goes right here, yes?
Yeah.
Your name, my name, class, date. Only on the first page. Some people will put it on every page. I don't know why you would do that, but very good. What else? A couple more things. Title gets centered right after the header we just talked about. Personal favorite for most of you will be rough draft. I know. Attention to detail is kind of lacking sometimes. Anyway, title. What else? Times New Roman. 12, that's your font. Double spaced. You want to turn off extra spaces between paragraphs. You guys won't do that, but you should. And you want your last name, right? Up here with page numbers. Whatever your last name might be. And then you're off to the races, right? You got like an introduction, body paragraph, another body paragraph, conclusion. There's your paper, right? 3 pages, 5 paragraphs. That's just what's in your heart. 5 paragraphs. That's basically all you've been taught in high school. It's almost like I chose this length on purpose. You should feel safe. Questions about any of this? Because we can talk about MLA, but I don't want to. All right. If you have questions as we go through the semester, that is what I'm here for, whether it's MLA or whatever else. So hit me up. Also, and I pointed this out last time, there's an MLA template on CourseDen, and you can legit plug in all your stuff, and you'll pretty much be right. I mean, there's ways to screw up a template. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but if you're a little bit careful, you can probably make it happen. All right. Oh, hell. All right. If I walk too fast, it like gets me. Let's talk about old men playing basketball. Now, I don't care how you look at the poem, and I should not have to say this, but I do. You do need to look at it. So if you need to pull it up right now, go ahead and do that. I'll say this while you're doing that. Really, part of what you need to do in core classes, and I can only speak to this one, but core classes in general, I think, hold to this rule. Part of what you're doing is figuring out what kind of student you are. We all work a little bit differently, okay? So for me, I can't really look at it on a screen. It works, but it doesn't work as well. So I have to print it out. I'm always gonna print poems for us, for me. After today, if I were you at some point, just do a little inventory. Like, did that go as well for me? Would it help me to have it in front of me? Maybe I could take some notes as we talk about it. That's why I like to have it. That sort of thing. And in the future, we read Little Boy, I believe, next time. You may want to print it real quick. It's a page, won't cost you really anything, right? But be thinking about that kind of stuff. Anyway, there are 3 steps to the analytical process, really, with any text, and we talked about this last time. Does anyone remember step 1?
Read it.
Oh, you didn't sound sure. Yeah, you gotta read it. Good, let's do that now. Old men playing basketball. The heavy bodies lunge, the broken language of fake and drive. Glamorous jump shot slowed to a stutter. Their gestures, in love again with the pure geometry of curves, rise toward the ball, falter, and fall away. On the boards, their hands and fingertips tremble in tense little prayers of reach and balance. Then, the grind of bone and socket, the caught breath, the sigh, the grunt of the body laboring to give birth to itself. In their toiling and grand sweeps, I wonder, do they still make love to their wives, kissing the undersides of their wrists, dancing the old soft shoe of desire? And on the long walk home from the VFW, do they still sing to the drunken moon? Stands full, clock moving. The one in army fatigues and house shoes says to himself, pick and roll, and the phrase sounds musical as ever. Radio crooning songs of love after the game, the girl leaning back in the Chevy's front seat as her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie. And now he drives, gliding toward the net. A glass wand of autumn light breaks over the backboard. Boys rise up in old men, wings begin to sprout at their backs. The ball turns in the darkening air. All right. Step 2. Does anyone recall? There's only 3 steps. Step 1's read it. Step 2. Okay. Step 2 is we got to make sure we know the plot. We understand the plot. That's an easy thing to take for granted. If you don't know the plot and then you base your analysis upon a misreading, it pretty much never goes well, right? So you got to make sure you understand what you read. First of all, before we get into, we'll go stanza by stanza here. Before we do that, can somebody just very generally summarize the poem for us? What's the poem about? Look at you. That is the easiest question I will ask probably all semester. Very good. And you jumped at it. That's what you should do. If you get an easy question, you take that shit. It's about old men playing basketball. Probably. So, first stanza then. What's going on there? Got heavy bodies lunging, broken language, a fake and drive. What is that first stanza doing? What are we describing? Oh. Really? So what? How they play. How do they play? What's it sound like? What do you envision when you read those lines? Are they crossing each other up? Are they slow would be a way to put it. How else would we put it?
They're weak.
They're weak? Sure. Broken language of fake and drive. What's a broken language? Any ideas? Okay. Well, let's try the second stanza. Maybe that'll help us a little bit. They're rising toward the ball now. They fall away. Their fingertips on the boards tremble in tense little prayers. Then the grind of bone. What's going on in the second stanza? Sounds like more of the same, right? But again, what does this game look like to you? It's not just weak. It's not just slow. What's it sound like these guys are going through out there? They're hurting? Yeah, it's a struggle, right? They are struggling mightily, physically. It's old men playing basketball. It's hard. Talking about grinding bones. Yeah. Third stanza. Not just the grind of bone, but also socket. The grunt of the body laboring to give birth to itself, toiling, grand sweeps. What's going on here? It's another easy question. Still playing basketball and still hurting. Yes, good. First 3 stanzas, basically, if we're talking about plot, they're playing basketball and it is real hard for them. Okay? Okay. Fourth stanza, talking about wives and wrists, walking home from the VFW. What's going on there? That feels different. Any ideas on what's happening in the fourth stanza?
They're looking back at the past.
In a way, why do you say that? Will you do chest, please?
Because they're not doing that now.
Well, he says at the last line of the previous stanza, do they still? So he's saying they once did these things, right? But he's wondering if they can still do it. Yeah. What's it generally? Can we describe what's going on in the fourth stanza? It's not basketball, right? Long walk home. Do they still sing? He says, with their wives. What's going on in the fourth stanza? If we're talking about when they were younger.
Like
Activities
activities they used to do.
they used to do. Okay. Sure. Moving on. Drunken moon stanza. Stands full, clock moving. Pick and roll. What's going on in the fifth stanza? 4 or 5? Yeah, fifth stanza. What's going on here? Where are we now?
Another game.
Well, I think we're at the same game, but we're back. And that's important to recognize. The first 3 stanzas, we're at the game, it's damn hard. 4th stanza, we go somewhere else, much like we did last time with Martin's Ferry, right? We started at the football stadium and we very quickly went somewhere else. Same kind of move here. In the 4th stanza, the speaker, we kind of go into his head for a second, right? We see his thoughts. And then in that very next stanza, we're right back at the game again. Stands full, clock moving, right? Radio crooning. What's that stanza doing? Are we still at the game? Where are we? Huh?
When the game's done.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, but did I cut you off? I feel like I cut somebody off.
I said you're in a car, but you didn't.
Yeah, we are clearly somewhere else. It is clearly not the game anymore, and it could be after this game. Could be. Okay. Things are happening.
Just after the game.
Yes, but it's slightly more complicated than that, but yes. Okay, last stanza. Gliding toward the net, glass one of autumn light, boys and old men, all that stuff. Where are we at the very end of this poem?
Are we back at the game again?
Yes. End at the game, right? So again, in the first 3 stanzas, we're in the basketball game. It's hard. 4th stanza, we're in the speaker's head, I think. He's kind of wondering. He has thoughts about these guys, right? 5th stanza, we're back at the game again. He's looking around, seeing some more stuff. 6th stanza, we're going to have to talk about where we go, but we're very clearly not at the game. And then last stanza, we're back at the game. Now, to lay it out like that, it sounds a little bit weird. Probably, and I'll grant you that. But consider this. We call them the speaker, again. Sorry, I thought I heard the door. We call them the speaker because it's like they're talking directly to you. Okay? And when a lot of times when somebody does that, they meander, do they not? They go into their thought process a little bit. You very rarely get a straight story from somebody. Same thing here. First 3 stanzas, that's just what he's seeing. 4th stanza, we go into his head. 5th stanza, I saw some more stuff. 6th stanza, back into his head. We move a little bit. Learning to navigate that is going to help you a lot, just in life, but at the very least in a class like this. Okay, now the fun part. Analysis. Clearly, I'm going to lead you through this. That's kind of my job. But part of how I do it is I'm going to watch you flail for a minute. What I want you to try to do, and I want you to actually try, okay? Look through the poem. Do you notice anything that seems odd or significant, might be worth thinking about more? Anything at all? Take a minute. There's a class walking by, I don't know why. First thing, anybody come up with anything there? Anything noticeable? Struck you as odd? You don't have to have an answer right now, by the way. But if you something like, maybe that's a little weird or a little potentially interesting. Nothing in the first stanza?
broken language?
For sure. Do you have any inklings about that right now? Or because I asked before, and it sounds like I'm asking you, and I kind of am, but I'm asking the room. What is broken language just all on its own? What is that? If you hear the phrase broken language, what do you think about?
Incomplete sense.
No. What?
Incomplete sentences.
Kind of.
Like they speak a different language, and when they speak your language.
It's not their native language. Like you may have heard the phrase before, broken English.
Yeah.
Or if you've taken another language, you absolutely speak broken Spanish or French, right? Like you can do it, but you're not fluent. Most of your knowledge is like how to get from your house to the library, right? Like that's your broken Spanish. Broken language. They know how to speak the language of basketball, but it's not fluent anymore. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of biblioteca going around when they're trying to Google. Anyway, good. And we may have more to say about that right now, but that's a good start. What you basically hit upon, one of the ways to try to pick out significant details is loaded language, something that means more than just what is on the page, right? And this is absolutely a metaphor, so there's absolutely more to it. Good. Second stanza. Anybody see anything there? Anything strike you as odd or potentially interesting? Good, because I really want to talk about the third stanza. Anything strike you as odd or interesting in this third stanza?
The body giving birth to itself?
That's fucking weird. Yeah. Yeah. It's just weird. Right? What? Nobody talks like that. Nobody talks like that. Alarm bells. That's mostly what we're concerned with today. Again, at this stage in your collegiate careers, you're all, just little puppies. You don't have to be great at this. But you can't get better without doing this first, just noticing things. And if it comes down to, that's fucking strange, that's good. For sure. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have thoughts on what you might do with those lines, but I'm not, they're so weird, I'm just like, I don't know. But that means it's worth further consideration, yes? Good. That's the sort of line I would make a note of it on my drafts, like on my notes, and be like, come back later when you figure out other parts of the poem. Just because I'm not sure right now, right? Good. Anything else in the third stanza? There's another line that's a little easier than that one. You guys never see this. Wild to me. All right. Go with me for a second. So this guy is at a game watching old men playing basketball, which first of all, is kind of a weird thing to be doing, just all on its own. Who does that? Anyway, he's there, and he's watching them struggle for 3 stanzas, okay? And all that makes complete sense, right? If you picture right now old men playing basketball, it probably looks about like that. Okay. Last line of the third stanza. I wonder, do they still make love to their wives? What?
Because they're old and fragile.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure everybody heard you, but we said because they're old and what?
Fragile.
Fragile. They're struggling, right? Now, what's interesting to me, 2 things. One, I think everyone can agree that that's a logical thought process in a way. Like, that's what's happening. The speaker sees them struggling physically, and he's like, I wonder if they struggle physically elsewhere. It makes sense. Okay. But on the other hand, he's just watching old men play basketball, and he goes, I wonder if they still get down. Right? Weird? Kind of weird? Yeah? Good. Well, let's think about that for a second. Again, it's worth thinking about. If the speaker spends 3 stanzas describing old men playing basketball and then takes a hard left turn into bedroom, it's worth asking why. I think you gave us his thought process, right? They're old, they're struggling, they can't do this. But still the question remains, why does his head go there? His head could go anywhere. Man, I wonder if they still get out there and cut the grass, which by the way is how I hurt myself. It's hard. Like any physical activity he could go to, why does he go there, right? Any thoughts on that?
I wonder if like they still prioritize their love life out of basketball.
Huh?
Like
I just didn't quite follow you.
maybe he thinks that they're like so into basketball, he wonders if they prioritize.
No. Hang on. All right. I think I see what you're saying. This next part will help. Okay. Sometimes you'll light upon evidence that is strange, much like the body laboring to give birth to itself, right? This one's a little easier to solve. You know exactly what this line means. But it's also out of nowhere. But now that we've looked at it and we've admitted, okay, the speaker is a little bit too concerned with whether or not these guys have a sex life, right? We have that knowledge. We can go back and look through the rest of the poem. What I want you to do for 2 more minutes, same thing you did a moment ago, but now you have this knowledge. You have the thought that the speaker, damn near in the middle of the poem, wonders whether or not they still make love to their wives. I want you to go look for language in these other stanzas. Does anything stand out now that you've seen his concerns? Take a minute. Anybody find anything?
Could it possibly be, so he says in the verse, he says, in love again with the pure geometry of curves. So maybe he's wondering, like, they fell out of love with basketball for a long time, so maybe they also fell out of love with different things as well. And so.
Oh, you guys are cute. No, I mean, you guys are trying really hard to make this PG, which is, it's not. Slow down for just a second. Let's talk about the line she just gave us. So in the first stanza, their gestures in love again with the pure geometry of curves. Now we pointed out already that the first stanza is about basketball. The pure geometry of curves. I don't know if anybody watches or plays basketball. That's a really beautiful way to talk about the game, right? It is, on some level, math. When it comes to how the ball moves and the players besides, and like passing and dribbling and different kinds of shots, it's pure geometry, it's curves. Like that's a really cool way to talk about basketball. However, we have just noticed prior to this that he very quickly comes to the thought, the wondering as to whether or not these guys still get down. Is there anything else pure geometry of curves could speak to other than basketball? Very good. Not everyone else saw you do that, and I'm going to do this on camera now. She did this. whole thing, right? Scandalous. If that last line of the third stanza didn't exist, we would not have a leg to stand on, saying that this line might be sexually charged. But, again, 2 stanzas after this, he blatantly tells us what he's concerned with. The sex lives of these old men. So when he says a thing like, in love again with the pure geometry of curves, you could make the argument that he's talking about women. Right? Also, let's talk a little bit about line breaks real quick. The cool thing about poems, and I say this with full knowledge that you guys don't think poems are cool, we're mostly talking about that second line, right? Again, with the pure geometry of curves. Might be a little sexy. Love gestures is what that line break gives you. They're gesturing in love. Not a lot of handshakes with what he's getting at, right? You're talking about gesturing in a loving way. It's a very set amount of physical gestures you could engage in. Some of you are looking at me right now like, are we actually talking about this? We are. I did not write the poem. But look, let's look at the second stanza. Now that you kind of know where we're headed, does anything stand out to you in the second stanza? I'm doing this to prove something to you, by the way. Is there any language in here that might kind of do a similar thing? See people nodding. I need those people to say something.
Their hands and fingertips tremble in the temples.
On the boards, their hands and fingertips tremble. Now, not everyone maybe knows a whole lot about basketball, but there's a backboard. You can also talk about a rebound as a board, right? We have that terminology. On the boards, their hands and fingertips tremble. If we are thinking this could be suggestive, what might it be suggestive of? I'll wait. The question is what kind of board we're talking about, right? Very good. Yeah. And all of a sudden it is there, right? Now again, I have a reason for doing this. I'm not trying to make you all squirm. If he does not ask in the third stanza, I wonder do they steal my glove? If he does not do that, we're just doing a really weird thing with a poem. It's not really there. But he blatantly says this, and that allows you to go to other parts and look for connections. It seems like at this stage, he's asking that question the whole time without really meaning to, right? His language is kind of telling on him, you could say. We don't have to talk about the grind of bone. We'll leave that alone. But then you have the caught breath, the sigh, the grunt of the body laboring to give. We have a line break there, right, which allows us to read it on its own terms before we get to birth to itself. My favorite line break in the whole poem. And I want to highlight it for you here. I keep talking about line breaks. Does anybody not know what I mean when I say line break? Good. Okay. I wonder, do they still make love, line break, stanza break, to their wives? We've said already, and I've hopefully started to prove to you, that he's actually pretty concerned with the sex lives of these old men. Talk to me about that line break. We've been reading it this whole time as, do they still make love to their wives? Which is what he says. But he doesn't break on wives. Where does he break? Love. So you could argue, what's his real question? What's he really worried about? What?
Like making love to someone else's wife.
Well, just making love at all. At all. Wives, you could argue, almost come in like an afterthought. Like, I mean, of course, I mean, they're wives, right? It's on the next line. But his real concern, do they make love, period. The line break allows you to make that argument. Okay? And again, up to this point, it does kind of seem like he's really worried about that. Our question in a minute is going to be why. But I want to show you a couple more things first. Again, even in this fourth stanza, do we have any suggestive language? They still make love to their wives. You can think about line breaks here, kissing the undersides of their wrists. Do we need to talk about that one? Utter silence. Okay. Well, I'm not going to. But it's to break on undersides is suggestive there, we would say. Dancing the old soft shoe of desire. Does anyone assume that that's a real dance? Like the Macarena or something? That's good. All right. And on the long walk home from the VFW, real quick, total gear shift. What the hell's a VFW?
There's one in Buchanan, but it's got big ponds, so I don't know. But it looks like a park.
Veterans of Foreign Wars. If you don't know what something is, you should look it up. Even if you have one nearby, you should look it up. Veterans of Foreign Wars. It's for vets, specifically of the World Wars. These are veterans from World War II. So they're pretty old, but they've also seen some shit, right? I don't know how much you've studied of World War II. Maybe in a social studies class, it's pretty intense. Do they still sing to the drunken moon? Then we're back at the game. Clock moving. The one in army fatigues and house shoes. We left all the sexy stuff behind, it seems like, by the way. Army fatigues and house shoes, says to himself, pick and roll. What's a pick and roll? Does anybody know?
And offensively.
Yeah, it's a play in basketball. You set up somebody, you pass, you provide a pick. Anyway, these guys are knowledgeable of the game, is kind of what we're learning here, okay? But talk to me again about line breaks real quick. Do we break anywhere in this drunken moon stanza that might be interesting, might be worth thinking about? Again, probably thankfully for most of you, we're not suggestive here right now. We're taking a break from that. Talk to me about army fatigues. What are those? Of a sort. They're what you wear, like, I mean, they're not actually for like battle. They're army casual wear, maybe is how I would put it. So you see this guy in army fatigues. You assume what?
He's a vet.
He was in the army.
Yeah.
Good. No trick questions here. Okay. Do you make any other assumptions about it? Like the guy just walked in right now in army fatigues. Would you have any assumptions about that guy? Like what? What would you think about it? What kind of person would you assume he is?
Proud.
Okay.
He's still wearing the clothes.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. Okay. What else? Did you say, what did I say?
No, what did he say?
Proud.
Oh.
Because he's wearing this stuff, so obviously he must be, that's a fairly fair assumption to make. What else?
Brave, hardworking.
Brave, hardworking. Okay. Why?
Because he's in the military.
So that whole, like, thank you for your service idea, right? All that, okay? How do you imagine this guy navigates his life? Like, what does his house look like? What is, like,
He's probably all like uniform or like scheduled out.
Very neat
Yeah.
and structured?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone else is kind of working with those same assumptions, right? Again, we have a narrative around certain modes of dress. If you see somebody in army fatigues, all of those just come out immediately. Like you just assume you know what that guy's life is like. I know a guy who was in the army, he's a slob. For the first 6 months, he was like real, but then he was like, fuck that, and he's a complete slob. But that's not part of the narrative. Now, I bring all that up to say, again, we're kind of getting that here. The one in army fatigues, all of that comes up. We break on army fatigues. What information do we get about this guy on the next line? What else is he wearing? House shoes. Somebody talk to me about house shoes. He's chilling. What are house shoes? Not even. What are house shoes? Slippers. They're slippers. I don't know why. I always picture them with bunnies on them. I don't know what that is about me. Does that change even a little bit how you see this guy? Keep in mind everything we just said about the kind of guy you imagine he is, right? According to the narrative. What does house shoes do? Make it what?
He looks sloppier.
Oh, well, what do you mean by that?
Like he just slapped.
He's not as, well, he's not as what?
Uniform.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely out of uniform and is rocking these shoes. What is it?
Those aren't standard.
No, they're not standard. Well, we slow down for a second. If you saw like anybody in slippers, we're talking about connotations right now. Denotation is dictionary definition, okay? So the dictionary definition of slippers is shoes to be worn around the house, right? That sort of thing. Connotation is, those are ideas that we associate with a thing, okay? They're not really in the dictionary usually. What do you guys associate with house shoes?
He got out of bed.
Just got out of bed?
Hugh Hefner.
To a point, okay. What? I mean, the reason Hugh Hefner is rocking those, right, is the kind of life he leads. Yeah? Like, what kind of life is that? To a point. What are house shoes?
Comfortable.
They're comfy. They're comfy. Army fatigues do not connote comfort. They may be, but they do not connote that. Do you understand what I'm saying? House shoes are, I mean, you said chilling a minute ago. Like it's that idea. Again, flies in the face of everything we said about army fatigues. So why give that to us on the second line, do you think? How does that operate with our understanding of army fatigues? I'll put it another way. Because we're talking about that line break. Why do you think he breaks there? He breaks on army fatigues. What does that allow the speaker to do?
Suggest something else about somebody else.
Kind of put an idea in your head about the kind of guy this guy is, right? But then what happens when you get the house shoes bit?
Change the idea.
Changes it radically. Maybe not completely, but pretty radically. He tricks you in a way. He sort of makes you recognize your own assumptions about these people when you see him out and about, right? He's in house shoes. He's comfy. We also, to tie it back to the theme of the class, associate army fatigues with who? What kind of person?
Masculine.
Super masculine. What'd you say?
Oh, what is it? My bad.
It's all good. They're more masculine, at least historically, especially if we're talking about VFW, World War II. They weren't letting women serve back then. Yeah, it's a much more masculine mode of dress, right? Just in terms of how we think of it. House shoes, not so much. I've never owned slippers. They're probably nice. I've never. It's more of a feminine thing, right? So we're also undercutting that like capital M masculinity that this guy sort of evokes.
You don't have no slippers.
Mm-mm.
Nothing that you can kick your shoes off and put on some slides.
I go barefoot.
Not even slides, though.
Slides?
Flip-flop.
I honestly don't even know what that is. Flip-flops hurt my toes. I don't like them. Anyway, but to answer your question, no. Where were we? Oh, so just in those two lines, we're sort of engaging in. He's offering you different judgments of this guy, right? And he's sort of telling you, you see him one way with this line break, and then immediately on the next line, you see the house shoes. It doesn't just seem important to us, I think it's important to the speaker, right? He tells you two things about this guy. Those are the two things he notices. So he cares about this stuff. What's masculine and what's not. We're going to file that away, but that's interesting, right? Penultimate stanza. Penultimate, very fancy word for second to last, okay? Radio crooning songs of love after the game. The girl leaning back in the Chevy's front seat as her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie, and now he drives. Given everything we've said thus far, do you guys notice anything in that penultimate stanza? Anything stand out to you?
Outdoor movies.
What is an outdoor movie?
A drive.
A drive-in. They're at a drive-in. Now, we touched upon this much earlier in class, but we need to solve it now to make sure we're making sense. Is this, and this is a harder question than you may realize, is this occurring after the game that this guy is watching?
I think it's in his head.
Why?
Because he just like went a whole different route. I don't know.
Well, like, what's more likely? Think about it like this. Is it more likely that these old men who sound like they're about to fall out leave this game and go to a drive-in, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore?
Yes, they do.
Not really. We have one in Atlanta, I think. And it's a tourist thing. It's like, oh shit, they have a drive-in, right? Like, it's not, the reason it's a big deal is because they don't exist. Or is it more likely that this guy is wondering about whether or not they could still do it because they used to? You see what I'm saying? And again, we know his head works like that. Why? Because he did what now? Yeah, well, when we were in his head before, what did he do? He did what? Basketball, and what happened? What did he? We're talking about stanza 4. Do they still do all these things, right? He's wondering, can they still do it, because he assumes they once did. And so when we dive into his head again, he's doing the same thing. Could they still do it because they used to, right? They used to go to drive-ins. They used to get a girl in the Chevy's front seat, he says, right? Now again, you guys all have sort of a certain picture of how any of that might work, because we've all seen the same movies. Of course old people went to drive-ins. Of course they, like, that's, like, you go to the stupid club where everybody wears the dresses with the poodles on them, they dance to bad music and have milkshakes, right? Like, we've seen the same movies. We have the same stereotypes about these people. He's doing that. We don't know. We never know the lives of these old men. We never ask any of them. We only ever hear from the speaker, okay? These are his assumptions about these guys. He sees old men playing basketball and they struggle physically. He assumes they struggle physically elsewhere. We dive into his head, thinking about their past. We get to see what he imagines their past was like. That's an important distinction, okay? We never find out what they actually once did. This is just what he imagines they did. So to bring that all home, we learn a hell of a lot about the speaker in this poem. We learn very little about the old man, actually. But the way that he views, describes, considers these old men, that tells us everything about him. You see what I'm saying? Now, any language that stands out to you in this penultimate stanza. Now that, honest to God, this last stanza, it's a hypothetical. He's just like, this is probably what they did, right? Back in the day when they were young. You see any language we could think about? Means more than it just says on the page, right? Like, I'll help you out. Radio crooning songs of love after the game. That's a really fancy way of saying the radio is playing love songs after the game. Can't do much with that. It means what it says. But the other three lines, do we have anything we can maybe pull out? Like, this is doing more than just what it says on the page. You're gonna make me do it, aren't you?
Her hair flames.
That's really cool. The hell's going on there? Her hair's not on fire. Her raven hair, black hair, flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie. Anybody got to read, like, literally on what that means?
Like the idea what it means?
Yeah.
I would think that means I would say that I would say like they got to like see the
Well, let's check it out. Have you ever come back into a theater, like when the movie's, like maybe come back from the bathroom or something, the movie's going, and you see everybody? You know how the light is like insane, right? That's what he's describing here. The light on her hair from the drive-in is fucking nuts. You just can't really say that in the poem, right? The light on her hair was fucking crazy. Like, it doesn't sound as good. Flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor. That's what it is. It's shuddering light bouncing off the projector onto her hair. That's what he's describing, literally. Now, though, metaphorically, keeping in mind what we've discussed thus far, as her raven hair flames in the shuddering, we break there. We don't get to light yet. Might there be an alternative reading of that line? I honest to God can't tell if you have a yes or a no clanking around in your silent heads. What kind of shuddering are we talking about? Is she cold?
I'm nervous.
You poor sweet boy.
Well,
They're at a drive-in. She's leaning back in the Chevy's front seat. Is she tired? No.
She's watching the movie.
Oh.
Okay.
Watching the movie. She's watching the movie. Importantly, we never get the title. It's almost like no one cares what the movie is. Right? Yeah. Her raven hair flames in the shuddering. We break there. That's a decision that the poet, the speaker, makes. That's more suggestive language. Anyway, that gets us to the last line of the penultimate stanza. Shuddering light of the outdoor movie, and now he drives, gliding toward the net. So again, literally, we go back to the game there, right? Very interesting kind of segue from this hypothetical in the speaker's head to basketball game. But here again, I'm not gonna give this one to you, so we will flail for the next 15 minutes if we have to. We break here on drives. Her raven hair flames in the shuddering light of the outdoor movie, and now he drives. Where is he going?
Home.
hurt me to do that. Where's it going? Is it nervous laughter because you understand? Yes? Okay, well, somebody said home. That's not.
Well, I mean, take her out of the movies, we over here talking about sex, so.
Good. It's my job to make sure you. Okay, good.
You trying to take it to the boom boom boom.
Good. Okay, thank you. That is what's happening.
Great, you don't have to fail.
We may still. But my point is, we were doing it all through the first couple stanzas. We took a little bit of a break, kind of, in like one stanza, and now we're right back to it. She's shuddering. He drives. Okay. But there's more to it here. And now he drives, gliding toward the net. Okay, we're back in the game. But if we're still in the land of metaphor, where we just were, the aforementioned boom boom room, I believe you said.
That's the game.
What do you mean by that?
Sex is the game.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. To get there, it might help everybody get on the same page. Let's talk about literally what's happening. Now he drives, gliding toward the net. We're not talking about metaphor, so we are at the basketball game. This is a safe question. What are we describing there? What's this old man doing? Gliding toward the net. What's he doing?
Trying to make a shot.
Yeah, what kind of shot? Huh? What? A layup. Right? There's no tomahawk slam coming. This is a layup from this old man gliding toward the net. He's about to score. But again, more than that, it's interesting to me that it's a layup. Why is that potentially interesting?
This is not gonna lay up this time.
Well, yeah, but like, more than that, what kind of shot is a layup? Easy. The first one you learn. I have a memory in like elementary school of learning how to do a layup in PE one day. It's easy. Does that matter? Why? What are we implying?
Maybe the easier things are so hard because he's old.
Do you think it's too hard?
I think I'm wrong, but maybe she's easy.
Yeah. She's a layup. That's what's on the page. And now he drives, and we all were like, that's absolutely what's happening, gliding toward the net to perform a layup, which is easy. Yeah. But again, to take it all the way back, we do not know what the lives of these old men were like. We hear very little actual fact, right? This is in the speaker's head. This is what he imagines their lives were like. After the game, they'd go to the drive-in, they'd pick up the girl, just some girl, I don't know, nondescript, right? The girl, she's a layup. It was easy for him back then. He has a certain image of what life was like for these guys, of what masculinity was like for these guys, right? That's his worldview that we just kind of solved a little bit. Now we got to ask the hard question. Why is he so worried about the sex lives of these guys? Do you think? Okay. He doesn't want to end up like them. What do we mean by that?
He is the old guy.
Well, even if he's not, we know that what? Huh? That's what we all hope to have happen. Yeah. It's just you just get old. Real talk, this back thing, I'm not old, fuck, I feel like it. Yeah. It comes for all of us, age does. He's worried about that. But again, he's worried about it in a very specific way. We spent the past 20 minutes talking about it. You can start to make the argument now, he's not just worried about getting old, he's worried about what?
Maybe he's into the men.
Huh?
Maybe he's into the men playing basketball.
What's he worried about?
Not being able to have sex when you're older.
You gotta say it with your chest.
I said not being able to have sex when you're older.
Not being able to have sex when he's older. Is that what you said? Good. And we know that why. What does he tell us? He sees these old men struggling physically. He wonders if they struggle physically elsewhere. He is super concerned with that throughout the poem. So much so that it's pretty easy to say he's worried about that for himself, right? We all know that you struggle physically when you get older because we see it. You just see it around. Well, if the next thought is, well, I'm going to get older. For many of us, I would think, valid concerns abound. But his one concern seems to be sexually. That's it. That's all he's worried about in this poem, when you really boil it down, right? There's way more suggestive language we didn't talk about, just because at some point it's just me having fun with you guys, like watching you get uncomfortable. Why is he so worried about sex? We're in the realm of an argument right now, by the way. Anything that comes out of your mouth until the end of class at this point is an argument. Huh? Oh, you have the wrong idea of what an argument is.
Why do you want to challenge us, everything he said?
Challenge you. That's what school is. That's how you get better. But no, an argument is anything that requires proof. So anything we're about to say is going to be a theory that you would then have to try to explain, is all I'm saying. We're used to the definition of argument like, you fucker, that's an argument. That's not the only kind of argument. The arguments we're interested in are observations that require proof, right? And you guys are right on the edge of them. Why do you think he's so worried about sex?
He's scared you're gonna can't get it up one day.
Sure. Why though? No, look, we're looking at the poem. All we can draw from is in this poem. That's all we can really use for the most part. But we know a lot about this guy and what he values, not just when it comes to sex, but when we see how he envisions the lives of these guys when they were younger, right? Like, what is it to be a young man to this guy? Sex is easy, basically, right? These old men playing basketball, they struggle physically. Does that happen to say anything about their masculinity to this guy? The kind of guy he is. Several people, she's like, oh, she's got something.
Repeat what you said. What about masculinity?
The kind of guy the speaker seems to be. What do you think his opinion of these old men and their masculinity? What do you think he thinks about it?
They're not masculine anymore.
They've at least lost a step, right? Why? Okay, but what's that got to do with their masculinity?
I really don't have well,
Somebody help her out.
When you get older, you also need help with certain things.
For sure. And look, again, we can keep it super PG and just say physical limitations. That's one of the hallmarks of masculinity, the way that we think about it, even today, right? And they're lesser in that way. But again, he gets more specific. He's worried about the sexy stuff. Would it be fair to posit that his definition of masculinity is 90% sexual ability? Something like that? Why do you think he feels that way?
Because he's a man.
What do you mean by that?
Like there's that, like, kind of like a stereotype that men like really don't care about sex.
Yeah, we got that narrative, don't we?
Yeah.
Does he not seem to pretty fully embody that narrative? Like his every thought, even the descriptions of the damn basketball game, when you go back and look at them, are super suggestive. It's It's everywhere that this guy says. Kind of backs that up. So now all of a sudden, we're not just saying something about the speaker, we're starting to try to say something about his worldview, his perspective, and where it comes from. The narrative around masculinity seems to have pushed this guy into sex is everything. And that affects how he sees people, how he judges them, things like this. Even, I mean, in a small way, in this poem, helps us think a little bit about how he sees women. It's not good. It's so rarely good in these poems. I do apologize. I didn't write them, but anyway. That's the start to argument. Okay? And like, what time is it, by the way? 40. Yeah, I know we have like no time left. With the last few minutes we have, I'm gonna try to steer this into what the hell I want you to do for homework. Explication. That's basically what we did today. Okay? And you'll read another poem for next time, so you can use Old Men Playing Basketball if you like, or you can use Little Boy, up to you. Start with a little bit of summary, not a lot. I want you to get out a summary as quickly as you can, but what happens, like in this poem, we spend a couple stanzas watching them struggle mightily, physically, playing this game, because they're old, and that tells us they have physical limitations, okay? But then we veer real hard into what those physical limitations might indicate behind certain closed doors, okay? And we go into the speaker's head, and basically we get to see a really strong glimpse into what he seems to value, what matters to this speaker, right? That's our super quick summary. And then after that, you do what we did with the rest of class, which was you go back and you try to find lines, you try to find specific details, and talk to me about sort of what else it might tell you about the speaker, about his worldview, why he arrived at that worldview, why he is the way he is, anything like that. That's really all I'm looking for from you in the homework, okay? Same goes for Little Boy. Spoilers, Little Boy is about a little boy. There's more to it than that, but it's gonna, on the surface, read a lot like this one. But then, of course, there's other stuff going on that we'll talk about. Do you have any questions for me? I forgot to mention, real quick, then I'll let you go. I forgot to mention last time, and I damn near forgot this time, we have an SI, the supplemental instruction. I sent you an email, but you guys don't check your inboxes. She's a really nice young woman. Her name is Grace. I've worked with her before. Basically, she has sessions that she does every week where she will she sort of helps you practice the stuff we do in class, basically. So if you ever feel lost or just ever feel like you would benefit from a little more practice, that's what she's there for. Also I should mention, if you go, she takes attendance. If you go to 3 sessions, I give you 5 points on a paper. So there's that too. But the email I sent you this morning, it has her schedule. She has face-to-face and online stuff. And you can also email her at some point if you want. She's nice. So, hey guys, it's not time. So. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.